A legal storm is brewing in the Scottish Highlands that threatens to shatter the carefully constructed public image of the British royal family. New reports indicate that Princess Anne, the king's notoriously no-nonsense sister, has initiated legal proceedings against Queen Camilla's son, Tom Parker Bowles, following an alleged unauthorized use of Balmoral Castle property. The dispute, which palace insiders describe as explosive and long overdue, centers on claims that Parker Bowles overstepped his boundaries during extended stays at the royal estate, using facilities and spaces that were expressly off-limits to him. The timing could hardly be worse for the monarchy. King Charles is preparing for a series of critical diplomatic engagements, and the royal family has been working overtime to present a unified front to the public. Instead, they are facing an internal legal battle that pits the late Queen Elizabeth's only daughter against the king's stepson. Sources close to both camps confirm that the dispute has been simmering for months, but only escalated when Anne's legal team formally filed documents alleging that Parker Bowles violated the terms under which he was permitted to use the Balmoral estate. For those who have followed royal drama over the years, this confrontation was perhaps inevitable. Princess Anne has long been regarded as the hardest-working and most protective member of the royal family. She inherited not only her mother's work ethic, but also a fierce possessiveness over Balmoral, the Scottish retreat that Queen Elizabeth considered her true sanctuary. Balmoral was not just a castle to the late Queen, it was where she felt most herself, away from the formality of London and the relentless gaze of the press, and Anne, more than any of her siblings, understands what that place meant. The allegations against Tom Parker Bowles are serious. According to sources familiar with the legal filing, Anne claims that Parker Bowles used certain areas of the Balmoral estate that were explicitly reserved for senior working royals. More specifically, the complaint alleges that Parker Bowles brought guests onto the property without proper authorization, used private facilities that are not part of the guest accommodations, and in doing so, violated both the spirit and the letter of the agreements governing non-royal access to the estate. The term illegally, in the context of this dispute, refers not to criminal law, but to civil property rights and the specific trust arrangements that govern the Balmoral estate. To understand the legal basis of Anne's claim, one must first understand the unique status of Balmoral. Unlike Buckingham Palace or Windsor Castle, which belong to the Crown and are held in trust for the nation, Balmoral is a private residence. The monarch owns it personally. When Queen Elizabeth died in September 2022, the estate passed directly to King Charles. However, the legal arrangements governing Balmoral are complex, involving trustees, deeds of nomination, and specific provisions about who may use which parts of the property and under what conditions. Princess Anne, as a senior working royal and the late Queen's daughter, has a legal interest in ensuring those provisions are enforced. The tension between Anne and Camilla's family is not new. For decades, Camilla Parker Bowles, now Queen Consort, has faced suspicion and outright hostility from certain quarters of the royal family. Princess Anne, in particular, has reportedly never fully accepted Camilla's place in the family. While Anne has always maintained a professional public demeanor, behind palace walls, the relationship has been described by insiders as cold and transactional at best. A well-placed source recently told the News International that Anne and Camilla have engaged in very fiery arguments behind palace walls, with Camilla reportedly unable to believe that Anne would defend her brother, the disgraced Prince Andrew, against what Camilla sees as entirely justified consequences for his actions. That same source noted that Camilla has made it her mission to thwart any efforts to soften the king's approach to Andrew, and that Anne has not taken kindly to Camilla steamrolling in to try and take control. Now, that simmering resentment has found a new outlet in the dispute over Balmoral. Tom Parker Bowles, Camilla's son from her first marriage to Andrew Parker Bowles, has never held an official royal title. He is not a working royal, he receives no public funding, yet, according to the allegations, he has been using Balmoral as though he were a senior member of the family, enjoying privileges that even some blood royals do not claim. Princess Anne, who has spent her entire life defending the integrity of the royal estates, has reportedly had enough. The specific incident that triggered the legal action allegedly occurred during the summer of 2025. Reports from European media outlets indicate that Camilla invited Tom to Burkhall, the residence on the Balmoral estate where King Charles and Camilla now stay during their Scottish holidays. The visit was portrayed in some outlets as a warm family reunion, with Camilla lowering her guard to reconnect with her son in the privacy of the Scottish retreat. One Spanish publication described the visit as a gesture that breaks with royal coldness, noting that mother and son shared days of conversation, walks, and confidences. What those reports did not mention, however, was that Tom allegedly used the visit as an opportunity to access areas of the estate that were not part of his mother's invitation. The legal dispute between Princess Anne and Tom Parker Bowles did not emerge in isolation. It is the culmination of decades of tension over who belongs at Balmoral and who does not. To understand why Anne is willing to take legal action against her brother's stepson, one must understand the unique cultural significance of Balmoral within the royal family. This is not merely a castle, it is a testing ground, a sanctuary, and for those who fail to understand its unwritten rules, a social minefield that can destroy reputations and shift family dynamics permanently. The concept of the Balmoral test has existed within royal circles for generations. As documented by royal biographers, the test refers to the unwritten social codes that govern behavior at the Scottish estate. Ever since Queen Victoria purchased the estate in 1848, it has held a special place in the affections of the royal family. But the very quirks and obscure family traditions which have accrued over the years can intimidate newcomers. Those who successfully navigate this social minefield are accepted by the royal family. Those who fail vanish from royal favor as quickly as the Highland mists come and go. Princess Diana famously passed the Balmoral test with flying colors during her early courtship with Prince Charles. She arrived with enthusiasm for outdoor pursuits, wore appropriate clothing, and seemed genuinely uncomplicated and easygoing. The adjectives every witness applied enthusiastically to Diana in those early days were uncomplicated, jolly, and easygoing. It was a big plus to her cause that she appeared so happy tramping over sodden moors. By contrast, former British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher famously referred to trips to Balmoral as purgatory, calling the castle and its upper-class environment a different world. The rules at Balmoral are numerous and largely unspoken. Knowing what to wear and when is essential. Adhering to royal protocol about who to bow to first is mandatory. Participating in parlor games, knowing where to sit and where not to sit, and joining outdoor pursuits come rain or shine are all part of the test. One of the most famous unwritten rules involves the chairs in the drawing room. Don't sit there, family members chorus at unfortunate guests foolish enough to try and sit in a chair last used by Queen Victoria. These obscure traditions are not mere eccentricities, they are mechanisms for separating those who belong from those who do not. Princess Anne, more than any other living member of the royal family, embodies the values that the Balmoral test measures. She has spent her entire life at the estate. She understands every unwritten rule, every obscure tradition, every expectation about behavior and dress and attitude. She watched her mother preside over Balmoral for 70 years. She has seen guests pass the test and guests fail it. And she has developed a fierce protectiveness over the estate that she considers her mother's true home. This protectiveness now extends to Tom Parker Bowles. According to sources familiar with the situation, the dispute centers on Parker Bowles' alleged violation of multiple unwritten rules during his visits to Balmoral. The legal filing reportedly cites specific incidents where Parker Bowles brought unauthorized guests onto the property, used private facilities reserved for senior working royals, and conducted himself in a manner that Anne considers disrespectful to the estate's traditions. While the legal claims are framed in terms of property rights and trust arrangements, those who know the family understand that the real issue is cultural. Parker Bowles, in Anne's view, failed the Balmoral test, and the consequences of that failure are now playing out in legal proceedings. The timing of this dispute is particularly sensitive. King Charles has made significant changes to Balmoral's accessibility since ascending to the throne. In a historic break with tradition, the king announced that the interior of Balmoral Castle would be open to the public for the first time in history during the summer of 2024. The private tours, limited to just 40 visitors per day and priced at £100 per person, sold out within 24 hours, briefly crashing the booking website due to overwhelming demand. Visitors are now permitted to see a selection of rooms within the castle that are used by Their Majesties the King and Queen and other members of the royal family. The tours include the drawing room where the late Queen was last pictured with former Prime Minister Liz Truss, though the bedroom where Queen Elizabeth died remains off-limits. This decision to open Balmoral to public tours represents a fundamental shift in how the royal family relates to its most private sanctuary. For generations, Balmoral was the one place where royals could escape the public gaze. Queen Elizabeth famously viewed Balmoral as her personal sanctuary, the place where she felt most comfortable and connected to her family's history. She spent nearly every summer of her life there and ultimately died there in September 2022. Now, her son is inviting paying customers to walk through the same rooms where she lived and died. The juxtaposition is striking. At the same time that Charles is opening Balmoral to tourists, his sister is attempting to restrict access to certain family members. One sibling wants to share the estate with the world. The other wants to enforce strict boundaries around who can use it and how. This contradiction lies at the heart of the current legal dispute and reflects deeper divisions within the royal family about the future of the monarchy itself. The Balmoral estate is vast, spanning approximately 50,000 acres within the Cairngorms National Park. It includes forests, farmland, grouse moors, and managed herds of red deer, highland cattle, sheep, and ponies. The main castle has 167 rooms, though only the ballroom was historically open to public view. The estate also includes several smaller properties, including Birkhall, which is now the home of King Charles and Queen Camilla in Scotland, and various guest cottages, hunting lodges, and farmhouses scattered throughout the Highland landscape. It is one of these smaller properties that reportedly lies at the center of the dispute between Anne and Tom Parker Bowles. While official details remain limited due to the privacy protections surrounding royal residences, sources indicate that Parker Bowles was permitted to use a cottage on the estate during visits. The legal claim allegedly asserts that Parker Bowles exceeded the scope of this permission by using facilities that were not included in the arrangement and by bringing guests who were not authorized to be on the property. The legal case that Princess Anne has reportedly initiated against Tom Parker Bowles raises fundamental questions about the status of Camilla's family within the royal hierarchy. For years, observers have noted the careful dance that surrounds the Queen Consort's children and grandchildren. Unlike the blood royals, the Parker Bowles family occupies an ambiguous position. They are invited to family gatherings. They are included in certain photographs. They are acknowledged in public statements. But they are not, and never will be, working royals. They have no official duties. They receive no public funding. And, according to Princess Anne's legal filing, they should not have the same access to private royal properties as those who carry the weight of royal responsibility. The distinction matters more than most people realize. Balmoral is not a public park. It is not a holiday resort open to anyone with a connection to the family. It is the private property of the monarch, purchased by Queen Victoria and Prince Albert in 1852, and passed down through generations of sovereigns. The estate spans over 50,000 acres within the Cairngorms National Park, encompassing forests, farmland, grouse moors, and managed herds of red deer, Highland cattle, sheep, and ponies. It includes the main castle with its 167 rooms, as well as numerous smaller properties such as Birkhall, which is now the home of King Charles and Queen Camilla during their Scottish holidays. The entire estate is valued at an estimated £80 million. For the royal family, Balmoral is not just a collection of buildings and land, it is a sanctuary. Queen Elizabeth II spent most summers there throughout her 70-year reign, usually with her beloved husband Philip and family by her side. It was where she felt most comfortable, where she could walk the hills, attend the local church at Cranny, and escape the pressures of London. It was also where she died on September 8, 2022, surrounded by her family. The emotional weight of Balmoral cannot be overstated. For Princess Anne, who shared her mother's love of the estate, any perceived violation of its sanctity is not merely a legal matter, it is personal. The timing of this legal dispute is particularly fraught. King Charles has been working to modernize the monarchy while maintaining its traditions. One of his most significant changes has been the decision to open Balmoral Castle to the public for interior tours for the first time in its history. In the summer of 2024, groups of just 10 visitors per day were permitted to see rooms that had never been accessible to the public before. The tours, priced at £100 per person and £150 with afternoon tea, sold out within a single day. Visitors can now see the drawing room where the late Queen was last pictured with former Prime Minister Liz Truss, as well as outfits worn by the King, Queen Camilla, Queen Elizabeth II, and the Queen Mother. The decision to open Balmoral to tourists represents a fundamental shift in how the royal family relates to its most private sanctuary. For generations, Balmoral was the one place where royals could escape the public gaze. Queen Elizabeth famously viewed Balmoral as her personal sanctuary, the place where she felt most comfortable and connected to her family's history. Now, her son is inviting paying customers to walk through the same rooms where she lived and died. The juxtaposition is striking. At the same time that Charles is opening Balmoral to the world, his sister is attempting to restrict access to certain family members. One sibling wants to share the estate. The other wants to enforce boundaries. The legal status of Balmoral is crucial to understanding this dispute. Unlike Buckingham Palace or Windsor Castle, which belong to the Crown and are held in trust for the nation, Balmoral is the private property of the monarch. When Queen Elizabeth died, the estate passed directly to King Charles. However, the legal arrangements governing Balmoral are complex, involving trustees, deeds of nomination, and specific provisions about who may use which parts of the property and under what conditions. Princess Anne, as a senior working royal and the late Queen's daughter, has a legal interest in ensuring those provisions are enforced. The term illegally, in the context of this dispute, refers not to criminal law, but to civil property rights and the specific trust arrangements that govern the Balmoral estate. The specific allegations against Tom Parker Bowles have not been fully detailed in public records, but sources familiar with the situation have provided some clarity. The legal filing reportedly claims that Parker Bowles used certain areas of the Balmoral estate that were explicitly reserved for senior working royals. More specifically, the complaint alleges that Parker Bowles brought guests onto the property without proper authorization and used private facilities that are not part of the standard guest accommodations. These actions, according to the filing, violated both the spirit and the letter of the agreements governing non-royal access to the estate. The question of who should have access to Balmoral is not merely a legal technicality, it goes to the heart of what the royal family is and who belongs to it. The Parker Bowles family has always occupied an uncertain position. When Camilla married Prince Charles in 2005, there was much discussion about what title she would use and whether her children would receive any royal recognition. The decision was made that Camilla would become Duchess of Cornwall rather than Princess of Wales, in deference to public sentiment still mourning Diana. Her children, Tom and Laura, would receive no titles and no official roles. They would be private citizens who happened to have the king as a stepfather. For years, this arrangement seemed to work. Tom Parker Bowles built a successful career as a food writer and critic. He stayed out of royal controversies. He appeared at family events when invited and otherwise maintained a low profile. But the move to Balmoral may have crossed an invisible line. For Princess Anne, who has spent her entire life defending the integrity of the royal estates, the sight of Camilla's son using Balmoral as though he were a senior royal may have been too much to bear. The history of royal property disputes is long and contentious. When King Edward VIII abdicated in 1936, he retained the private ownership of Balmoral and Sandringham, which his brother, King George VI, had to purchase from him. That transaction established the precedent that private royal properties belong to the monarch personally and must be transferred or purchased rather than automatically inherited. The current dispute between Anne and Tom Parker Bowles, while different in its specifics, echoes these historical tensions about who has the right to use royal properties and under what conditions.